to Movies TV Mag. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mag. Smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. A very warm welcome to, is it Tuesday or Wednesday? I don't know my days. I think it's Wednesday. A very warm welcome to Wednesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. How embarrassing. I don't even know my days. Zack Snyder had a plan. He was a man with a plan. He had a plan for Superman. He had a plan for Batman. He had a plan for Cyborg. He had a plan for The Flash. He even had a plan for Lois Lane. He had a plan for Cyborg. We were going to get a Flashpoint movie, a proper Flashpoint movie with Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne being the Joker and Killer Batman. It was going to be a faithful telling of that graphic novel. One thing you need to understand about the Flashpoint graphic novel, it's a very divisive story. Some DC fans actually hate it because Barry Allen, does a very, very selfish thing. He changes the timeline for his own ends. And he, all hell breaks loose because of his selfish behavior. And a lot of DC fans don't actually like Flashpoint. There's a myth that Flashpoint is one of the most popular, graphic novels. It's successful, but a lot of people don't like that story. In fact, I like the way in Arrowverse, when they did Flashpoint, that all the members of the Justice League in that universe called out Barry for his behavior. So Zack had a plan. Geoff Johns and John Berg didn't have a plan apart from lightening things up. Walter Hamada had a plan of check notes, but he didn't really have a storytelling plan. His plan was to create the DCU, Batgirl, Supergirl, Wonder Woman, and some beta male superheroes like Shazam. He was going to make Keaton the main Batman, but really Batgirl was going to be leading that universe. And this is why we are where we are today. And, I've been watching some very interesting videos and opinions on Michael Keaton, if he can pull in the general audience. The Flash movie is about nostalgia, DC nostalgia. How's that going to bring in the general audience? It brings in DC fans and geeks and nerds, but I don't understand how you attract the general audience via Michael Keaton and different things. There's the situation of seeing Helen Slater and Christopher Reeve cameo in this movie, and you do see old footage of Henry Cavill, but Henry Cavill should have actually been in the first act with Ben Affleck. And so Zack Snyder had a brilliant plan, but when corporations make creative decisions, when their only lookout is to make as much money as Disney and the MCU, the creative process goes down the toilet. So one of the headlines today is, could the Flash movie have a sequel? Rumors are saying if the movie makes enough money, there could be a sequel. I can't see how that's possible. And I think it's another desperate tactic to get you, the public and the audience, to support the movie. Globally, it's now projected to open up to around 155 to 165 million. Let me give you some clarity. That sounds like a really good opening, a great 5-day opening. But let me give you some numbers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. James Gunn's Guardians Volume 3 opened up to 300 million, right? 115 to 120 domestically. The Flash is now projected to open up from 68 to 80 million. It's just not enough to make enough money for a so-called sequel, but it was never ever going to have this sequel. Back in the Hamada days, they were planning a Crisis on Infinite Earths, a Final Crisis sequel, which would have been a Flash movie sequel. Now, we've heard James Gunn on the Inside of You podcast. He's doing something different. He's doing something new with DC Universe. He's talked about the world building potential, comparing the worlds of DC to Westeros. So he's talking a good game. He's saying the right things, but does he mean them, or is he just another bullshitter? I hope he's saying the right things because he means the things, right? Because what he's saying is absolutely right. They've oversaturated the comic book genre. That's all we're getting mostly in entertainment, and people are bored and fed up of this medium. There's no variety in entertainment anymore, and that's become a problem. So will there be a Flash sequel? In my opinion, there will not be a Flash sequel. There's been many mistakes made in the formation of the DC Extended Universe. That's why the past 5 movies have flopped and flopped badly for one reason or the other. Let's look at what James Gunn was going to do in DC before he was made co-CEO of DC Studios. Zaslav gave the main gig of leadership of DC Studios to Peter Safran. Peter Safran, through his production company, was already involved in the DC Extended Universe, and it was he who decided to bring in James Gunn, who was also already there. Who knows if they were looking for other people to run it creatively, and those people, after they finished laughing, said no. It's a bit of a shit show. It's a gig that most people didn't want because of what's come before. Now, as I've said many a times before, when you're looking to make something for the general audience, you don't bring in Zack Snyder. And, that's what Christopher Nolan did. And I've explained before why bringing Nolan to form a DC Extended Universe only works if he gives you the okay to expand his Dark Knight universe and uses Christian Bale as part of this new universe. Once he says, no, I don't want to do that, mate, you're out on your ear. What's the point in you? But these are all the problems. But Zack Snyder was interested in world building. He was going to create something special. And because it was so divisive and because they had no patience, they panicked. And I mean, when you build something, you can't just knock it down and rework it in another way. And this is what they attempted to do. And, we've spoken about also Justice League. I mean, they're still promoting Justice League as a studio. That tells you the people that were there who made the decisions about Justice League, are still there hiding. And I know a lot of you don't agree with that and just want to call me a conspiracy theorist. And that's up to you. The Jeff Johns, who was in charge of DC after they drove out Zack Snyder, wasn't the Jeff Johns who wrote those great graphic novels, wasn't the Jeff Johns who wrote 3 great episodes of Smallville, or that brilliant Stargirl show based on his own work in graphic novels based on his deceased sister. That wasn't the Jeff Johns. This was a Jeff Johns in charge of a corporation. He admitted afterwards being in charge of a corporation, being in that position, wasn't for him. No, it wasn't. He was the one who brought in Patty Jenkins. Zack had already brought in a really brilliant female director to do the first Wonder Woman. And Patty Jenkins proved with Wonder Woman 84 that she couldn't direct traffic. And, that's not me being nasty. They're the facts. So I don't see a Flash movie sequel. I don't see how that happens. I mean, maybe if it makes record-breaking money, and I don't see how that happens. Ronnie Dodge, morning Mick. Ronnie, my good friend, my geek and my nerd pal. I haven't spoken to you very, very long time. Welcome to Movies TV Mad. Welcome to the DC Universe Daily. And if you're here for a while, let me know, have you seen the Flash movie? Have you seen it yet? Have you been to an early screening? When are you going to see this movie? Because I'm very interested to hear what people think of this movie. Ronnie Dodge, I'm not seeing the Flash until Saturday as I'm on holiday. Right, okay, fair enough. So once you see it, why don't you tag me? Or if you're on one of my lives, let me know what you think of it. But as soon as you come out of the cinema, Ronnie, good idea. Go on my Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and at me, tag me and tell me what you thought of the movie. Give me your genuine, honest opinion, though. Don't say what you think people want to hear. If you loved it, great. If you didn't like it, that's also okay. It's all about honest opinions here on my platform, whatever they are, even if they don't suit my narrative or they don't suit, Doris's narrative down the road. It's about your genuine feelings. This is what these platforms should be about. Ronnie Dodge will do, mate. SLCA. Hi, I think I remember you, SLCA. Hi, great to have you on the live chat. So I'm going to sing a little song in honor to a film I absolutely love. Happy birthday, Man of Steel. Happy birthday, Man of Steel. It's officially a decade since Man of Steel was released. Now, I don't know what date it was released in America, but I'm from Europe. So it was released on today's date where I was living in the southeast of London in the UK. I saw this movie, I can't remember exactly how many times. I think it was about 3 to 5, 6 times. I really loved this effing movie. It was a contemporary Superman movie made for a jaded generation. This was the movie that, that they were talking about making. This is the kind of movie that John Peters was talking about for a very, very long time. More like Star Wars, a little bit darker, but it really worked. It was putting Superman in the real world. They made Clark Kent, Jack Bauer, having the longest day of his life, and it worked. John, hi, Mick. A very good morning, John. I'm here in Cyprus, so it's morning here. I think you're in the UK, John. So it's 4 minutes past midday here in Cyprus, but in the UK, it's 4 minutes past 10. So there is a bit of a difference there. So yes, Man of Steel is a decade old. And, tomorrow, I think in most countries, in a lot of countries, the Flash movie will be released. So around the decade after the first DCEU movie, we get the final DC Extended Universe movie. But there's a problem, because the Flash movie is a very, very entertaining movie, but it is missing something. Someone who launched the whole franchise. His name is Henry Cavill. As I said earlier on, he is in it via old Justice League footage, but he's not actually in the movie in any fresh footage. Christopher Reeve and Helen Slater, thanks to CGI, are going to cameo in this movie. Nicolas Cage, just for a few seconds, is in an epic version of Superman. They give him this great moment. I won't give that away. I think most of you know about it already. So that's awesome. So we do have some Superman in this movie. But this movie and this universe under Walter Hamada was going very DCU. They swapped Flashpoint Superman for Flashpoint Supergirl, right? No Cavill in the first act of this movie. We get Batfleck, but not Cavill. Still doesn't make any sense. That was the original plan, not to have Cavill in this movie. They don't like Henry Cavill, but they didn't want a male version of the House of L in this movie, apart from some really, really creative cameos. So the Flash movie is a very entertaining movie. It does have its problems, but I think if you leave all your negative baggage outside of the cinema and you go and watch this movie, you will enjoy it. It is a DC fan's wet dream. It's been criticized for ropey VFX in places. It also has stunning VFX in places. What went wrong? The problem with CBMs today and most movies today, they have too many CGI shots and they can't handle them under the schedules. So if you're planning 5 or 6, pieces of content in comic book movies to release in the theatrical system and on Max or Disney Plus, you won't be able to keep up with it, no matter how many VFX artists you've got. How do you solve this issue? By shooting as much as you can physically in camera. I don't care how challenging that is, and only doing CGI when you physically, humanly can't make the shot, right? There's other ways to do special effects apart from CGI. And there is far too much CGI in the Flash movie. And as I say, there are other ways of perfecting VFX, like they did with Superman the movie or Star Wars 77. You know, it's harder, it takes longer, it takes more manpower, or should I say more people power to be PC. But yeah, there's ways of pulling it off. Like I remember when CGI, like in Lord of the Rings, looked so good in Harry Potter. But Harry Potter doesn't have like thousands and thousands of VFX shots. It has VFX shots, but not as much as modern day Hollywood movies. And this is where the problem lies. And this is, you know, you look at Man of Steel, as we say, it's a decade old today. And the VFX and CGI is beautiful because people like Denis Villeneuve and people like Zack Snyder know what they're doing. Now what's happened is entertainment has become a conveyor belt. And now it's, that'll do, they won't notice. Yes, we will notice because they think us, the audience, are dumb and we're thick. And as long as they stroke us with some nostalgia, we won't complain. And they become very passive aggressive when we do begin to complain. So Man of Steel for me is a wonderful movie. No movie is perfect, right? But I really, really love Man of Steel. I like the contemporary element of it. I like the fact that this is a Superman in training. This is Superman Begins. He's put into this horrible situation where he has to fight his own people. And, you know, as I've said before, Shannon Zod is probably the best CBM villain I have ever seen because he doesn't really act like a villain. He is a character of circumstance. He's doing what he was trained to do. He's a clone. So they, you know, his preconceived position was to be a soldier. That's all he knows, to protect the people of Krypton. He was the hero of Krypton once upon a time. But then the bad way that, you know, the Kryptonian society was run, you know, that's why he becomes what he becomes. So he's not like you and me. He's not a logical character. He's been cloned to think a certain way. So he can only act that way. Man of Steel has also a lot of heart. Amy Adams, I've been hearing people saying bad things about Amy's Lois. Amy Adams is one of the best actors of her generation. She's a brilliant Lois Lane. And I think she's at her best as Lois Lane in Man of Steel, if you ask me. Man of Steel really does feel like a real contemporary Superman movie. Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White is great casting. Lawrence is a very powerful, compelling actor. And even though he's a gentleman of color, it doesn't really matter because when you're casting people like that, talented people, the color of their skin doesn't matter. And I was very happy with Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. And so a brilliant movie, and a movie that's, you know, they're treading in this movie, in the Flash movie, somewhat, but the lead actor of this movie can't be seen and not in fresh footage. And it's a shame. It's part of the reason that some people are going to boycott this movie because they're very defensive about Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill is a brilliant Superman, and he was never allowed to tell his Superman story. And Batman versus Superman could have been a very different situation if Zack was allowed to make his movie. Now, the 3-hour cut is his movie, but the whole idea of Batman and Superman fighting maybe would have been different if the studio didn't want to do a WWF brawl. Originally, Zack Snyder wanted to do a Man of Steel sequel, a direct Man of Steel sequel, a cyborg movie. He got to do the Wonder Woman movie, kind of. Most of it is brilliant, one of the best CBMs I've ever seen. He had great plans for his own Aquaman movie. I don't think that James Wan was his choice personally, but James did a really good job with the Aquaman movie. I really, really like Aquaman. I don't know what's going on with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. We'll get some clarification, but right now they're not talking about that movie. But James Gunn has been put in charge of a very, very difficult gig, and I'm trying to be open-minded about it. Because what happened to Snyder is one thing, and what James Gunn is attempting to do is something else. But it's very problematic when someone else takes over something, but you still see them promoting Justice League. That doesn't give you a lot of confidence for the future. But I'm going to remain open-minded. The Flash movie's ending, which basically is something that James Gunn brought into it, doesn't really tell me. I mean, look, in a way, the Flash movie ends with a bit of a cliffhanger and potential for a sequel. I still don't see a sequel for the Flash movie happening unless it's really, really successful. But it does end on a bit of a cliffhanger, really. John, did you ever see the DC animated movie, The Dark Knight Returns? I did, John, and I really enjoyed it. Both parts. It came in 2 parts, didn't it? Really, really good. Yeah, these are based off of graphic novels. Some of these animated movies are not very faithful to the source material, but some of them are really, really good. Even the ones who are not faithful to the source material. When James Gunn talks about doing his own DC animation, what DC animation is actually in really fine fettle. They haven't been as good lately, but what Bruce Timm did with the Justice League, the Superman animated series, the Batman animated series, the Batman original animated series, then Batman the Brave and the Bold, which is certainly my favorite Batman animated series. The Green Lantern animated series was awesome as well. So James Gunn is going to do his own thing with animation. So James Gunn has a plan. I don't know what semblance of a plan he's got, but he's certainly got a plan. And we're back to square one. That's the problem here. Because how many times since the DCEU has been formed that we've been saying, right, this new leadership's coming, let's give them a chance, it's not their fault, blah, blah, blah. We said it with Johnson Berg, we said it with Hamada. I think we were all fair to those people at the very beginning. And then we saw what they were attempting to do. And, that's the sadness of all of this. So now I find myself saying, well, I've got to be open-minded. James Gunn wasn't there at the beginning, but, it depends what he's going to do. He's talking about world building. He's talking about doing something different. Well, James, that's exactly what Zack Snyder was doing. Something different. Not different for the sake of being different, but he was being creative. He was being Zack Snyder. James Gunn has spoken about, being someone who used to feel like an outsider in Hollywood. I can certainly, relate to feeling an outsider as a kid because of my mental health problems and my dyslexia. I always felt like an outsider. Why can't you be more like your brother? So I can certainly understand where he's coming from there. Good morning, Blue Beetle Animator. DC always does Batman versus evil Superman stories. They should do a Superman versus evil Batman story. Actually, Blue Beetle Animator, they shouldn't do either. It's time for Superman and Batman to be mates and work together. There can be a bit of angst between them, like we get in the Batman Lego movie. I think that's cool and funny. But yeah, the other stuff, Batman versus Superman. I don't want to see Batman against Superman. And I think James Gunn gets that when he's spoken about the relationship between Batman and Superman in the past. John, The Dark Knight Returns had the best Batman versus Superman fight. Yes, it did. But it shouldn't be something that needs doing again and again and again. I don't want to see Batman and Superman being enemies. I like what they did in BVS and how they became friends in Justice League and how he feels guilty for Superman's death in the end. That's great. That's proper world building. That's proper storytelling. That's proper characterizations. And I love that. But as a word of thumb, as a rule of thumb, I don't want to see Batman and Superman being enemies, because if you keep on doing that, it simply doesn't make sense. Because Superman isn't part of the Batman Rogues Gallery, and Superman isn't part of Batman's Rogues Gallery. They've both got great Rogues Gallery. You don't need to put them against each other at the end of the day. And so, on my earlier point, I can't see a Flash movie sequel. Right now, the projections are not looking very, very good. Now, the projections could be wrong. Now, another interesting facet. Now, the media told us that Ezra Miller would not be doing any interviews at the premiere event of the Flash movie. Now, I echoed these reports. Now, I go on YouTube before I go to bed to see what's going on, to prepare for my daily video, this video, the DC Universe Daily. And I noticed that Ezra Miller actually was vocally talking to a reporter at the Flash movie premiere, and he spoke very well about the movie. For me, no matter their actions, it's important that the lead actor speaks about the movie. It can't just be Michael Keaton. It can't just be Michael Shannon. It can't just be Sash. You know, it can't be these other actors and the director. You need to hear from the lead actor. So yes, he did do an interview at the premiere of the Flash movie, and I thought that was great. I thought that really, really worked, and I'm glad that he did it. And you know, we can talk about what they did in the real world, which I can't defend, but there is a movie to promote here, and at the end of the day, it needs promoting, and you need the lead actor to be out there talking about the movie. You can't hide from this situation. They decided to release the movie despite the controversy around the actor. We're talking about a proper, real controversy about acts that that we've seen on video. You can't hide from this, but they've apologized. They decided to release the movie, so you've got to hear from the actor. There's no hiding it. But they never had faith in Ezra leading this movie from the beginning. That's why they brought Keaton into the mix. And it's as simple as that. That's why that happened. But the DCEU has been like digging yourself a hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And at the end, you're right at the bottom of it and you're trying to climb out. And they haven't managed to do that, unfortunately. Blue Beach Animator, good morning, Mick. Will you be seeing the Flash movie today? I'm hoping to see the Flash movie tomorrow, my friend. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And yes, I will let you know. I will give you a spoiler review once I'm able to see that movie. This is why I'm live all this week. And maybe I'll keep on being live, but it's a big week for DC fans. James Gunn has done an interview with Michael Rosenbaum on the Inside of You podcast. Lots to unpackage there. So we've been discussing that on last night's video as well. We've got a big movie, a DC movie released. There's a lot of discussions. Some people think it's a terrible movie. Some people think it's a great movie. It's an interesting situation. And I think at the end of the day, it's best not to believe anyone but yourself. Believe your own eyes and your ears. Basically, go and see the movie. Make your own minds up. That's all you can do. It doesn't look like this movie is going to be particularly successful, but we will see what happens there. But yeah, it's one of, this is a DC movie. They're always controversial. There's always mixed opinions, and we have a divided fandom. We have a divided fan base. Now, James Gunn mentioned this when he first took the DC gig. But who divided this fan base, James? It wasn't me. It wasn't the other fans. It was the studio and their decisions from the beginning that divided the fan base. If you didn't go and do Justice League, I'm not saying James Gunn did, but if they didn't go and do Justice League, the fan base wouldn't have been divided. If they just released Snyder's movie and then said we're going to go in a new direction, then fine. But what they did to Snyder after the man lost his daughter was disgusting. Of course, you're going to divide the fan base. They did it, not us. They divided this fan base through their bankruptcy, through their incompetence. That's who divided this fan base. They made illogical decisions. And after we found out there was a Snyder Cut, they lied, and they lied, and they lied again. And we, the fans, and Zack exposed them, and they didn't like it. And even now, and this proves it's still the same people there, behind Zaslav, behind Gunn, right? They're still promoting Justice League to sell this movie. How can you use one of the most embarrassing moments in your proud history to try and sell a movie you're desperate to sell? Are you that incompetent? Are you that bitter that you didn't win? It is ridiculous. And I look at myself as someone who hasn't got the experience to run a studio or to make a movie. But then I look at the people making movies today and running studios today. They're totally incompetent. And that's not a debate. That's a fact, because they're creatively and financially on their knees right now. If they're not boring on about identity politics and sitting there doing actor-on-actor interviews telling us how one person said this and one person did that. They're always calling each other out. They're like a bunch of big babies, and it is pathetic. And, so we didn't break this fan base. The Snyder fans didn't. Other DC fans didn't break this fan base, divide this fan base. They did. But they love blaming the fans. The reason this is a diluted fan base, the reason it's a broken fan base, because of the decisions this studio and several leaderships have made. After this writer's strike is over and this potential SAG-AFTRA actors strike is over, they need to make a decision, not for us, but for them and their future. If they carry on as an industry, not just a studio, but as an industry with this course, they are going to go bankrupt. There is no way back because the consumer is too clever for them. We're not 40 years ago. The consumer, thanks to the let me say that again. The consumer, thanks to the internet, is too clever for their own good. They know bad CGI when they see it. They know bad writing. They know bad acting when they see it, right? They know what they want to see. We understand. I've been watching entertainment since I was a little boy. So I may not be an elite writer-director, but I know what I want to see. And I know what I don't want to see. I know what I like, and I know what I don't like. And that's all that matters, right? I've given you the analogy of the moldy cheese. You buy a moldy piece of cheese from the entertainment industry, you take it back and want a refund, they'll get all passive-aggressive on you. There lies the problem. We're not here to service you. You're here to service us. You are running a consumer-based industry, and you're running it like the angry manager who's basically saying, oh, if you don't like going to this shop, fuck off to Sainsbury's. That's what's been happening today. And that's the problem. And this is why the DC Extended Universe is where it is today. The DC Extended Universe isn't on its knees and hasn't always struggled because of wokeness, not because of the culture war. Nothing to do with it in terms of DC. It's about creative bankruptcy and bad, horrible decisions. You wanted Nolan and Goya to come in because you thought Dark Knight Trilogy. You allowed them to bring in Zack Snyder, an auteur director who wasn't going to make anything for the general audience, but you wanted Man of Steel, BVS, and all these other movies for the general audience. Make it make sense. But once you get him and he's got a plan, you've got to let him finish it. You can't just cut him short and try and recycle what he did. And this is where the problem lies. And this is why we are where we are. So they're trying to sell ice to the Eskimos now. And that's the problem. And the Flash, as we know, projections are very, very low, as we always knew it would be. If they can't convince an audience after them telling us, the director telling us that Tom Cruise phoned him up directly to congratulate him on the movie, Stephen King went onto Twitter and said he loved the movie, even though he ain't a CBM fan. None of that has made a difference because nobody trusts you. Nobody believes you. When I was a kid and there was no social media, there was a distance between us, the creatives, and the actors. They were up there and we were down there and we looked up to them. We didn't know anything about their personal lives. We loved them. We idolized them. And because of social media, that has changed. James Akrap, hi, what happens if Superman Legendary flops? You mean, what happens if Superman Legacy flops? Well, I'm not a precog, James. I'm not Nostradamus, so I don't know whether or not that movie is going to flop. I don't even want to go there. But if you want to talk about that movie potentially flopping and what will happen, it's the launch pad for a new universe. Their previous universe has flopped. Their previous attempts have failed. So if this fails again, they're in trouble, and they would not be able to, I don't know what they do. Would they persevere with Gunn and, to try and attempt to get it right? But potentially, I don't think Superman Legacy will flop because I think Gunn is a bright guy. We only have to look at the recent Guardians of the Galaxy. They like Gunn. They liked his Guardians trilogy. over 800 million. That's more than any MCU movie has made for a very long time. Now, I know the Suicide Squad failed because of day and date, because of a peak variant in the COVID pandemic. But the Suicide Squad is a very, very good movie. But originally after that, he was just going to do HBO Max DC content. Then they put him in charge. So he's making these decisions. He's got a lot to prove. He's never had this type of responsibility before. So we've got to see what he gives us before we make a decision on him. I've spoken about my concerns in James doing a Superman movie. I don't particularly think he's a big Superman fan. I think he likes the underdog. He likes the grade Z characters. I don't think he's a big fan of Batman and Superman. But you don't necessarily have to be a fan of something to do something really well. You need ability, imagination, and talent. He has all three. But just because he's done other good CBMs, I'm not Nostradamus, as I say. I'm not going to say he's definitely going to be successful or he's definitely going to be unsuccessful. But I want to judge on consumption because the internet and fandom these days are just too reactive. I support Zack Snyder. I love what he did. But at the end of the day, we're going away from that and we've got to trust someone else to put DC on the map. But it's a very difficult time to do an interconnected, comic book, franchise of movies and streaming, TV and animation and gaming because it's not the peak anymore. So we're going to have to wait and see if he can pull it off. Waz007, hi, Mick. A very good evening to you, Waz. Very good to have you here on Movies TV Mad and the DC Universe Daily. Not too much breaking news today. There's rumours if the Flash movie exceeds a certain box office, basically equaling the box office of the Batman around 770 million, it could get a sequel. I think that's bullshit. And Man of Steel is officially 10 years old today. A great movie. Waz007, what happens to My Legacy lets money Man of Steel? Oh, I've just answered that question. I'll answer it again. Quite simple. Obviously, if the movie doesn't make from $1 billion to $2 billion, then they're going to be in a lot of trouble. I think as long as it makes $1 billion, they'll be happy. But really, that movie has to be targeting, Spider-Man No Way Home and Force Awakens type of money. And James Gunn has never directed a $1 billion movie. So he's got a lot of pressure on him. He's taken a big responsibility, and we have to see what he's capable of. This is up to him. He has free reign to do his thing. They trust him at Warner Brothers. They look up to him. They think he's the real deal. So he's got to prove he's the real deal. This is where we are now. James O'Crap, why don't Disney just shut down Lucasfilm? Well, why would they shut down Lucasfilm, James? Why would they, they bought it to make money. They've made a mess out of it, but you can't just shut down Lucasfilm. And if they feel they're not capable and they don't have the money to keep Lucasfilm, then they'll sell it to someone else to make money. After all, they're a business. But it's an illogical thing to say, why don't Disney just shut down Lucasfilm? Why would they do that? Why would anyone do that? It's a multi-trillion-dollar company or whatever it's worth. And someone's going to feel they can make a success of it. I personally think Star Wars should have ended after the Return of the Jedi. I don't think Star Wars has the potential to do loads and loads of different things. I think once you tell that Skywalker saga, it's done. I liked the prequels, but the prequels were so different to the original trilogy, people turned against George, and the negativity started from there. I think he was best served just to finish after Return of the Jedi. There's some people who don't even like elements of the Return of the Jedi, like the Ewoks. So, Lucas was being attacked by fans, even with the Return of the Jedi. So I think once that movie was done, he should have just wrapped up and just left it alone. And I think the same with Indiana Jones. Should have just made 3 movies, leave it alone. You've got to know when to get out. You've got to know when to go, go while the going is good. And Hollywood don't really do that because the community of people who work in Hollywood are very greedy and money motivated, and their money hungry kind of aesthetics always destroys them in the end, and it's destroying them now. Waz007, I like Returns of the Jedi. I like Return of the Jedi. I think is a really good conclusion, and I like the Ewoks. A lot of people don't. You know, some people hate the Ewoks, but ultimately they're these indigenous, you know, native species, and it shows you that when people are fighting for their homes, no matter how weak and small they are, they can still stand up to tyranny, to a tyrannical, powerful force. That's the message of the Ewoks. They're adorable, they're sweet. I like the messaging there. I didn't see the problem. I also didn't see the problem with Jar Jar Binks, but unfortunately, people went mad. And, you know, even, you know, pre-internet, they were able to communicate with actors and, you know, have a go at actors. And George, this is why George sold everything, right? And now George has got his karma. You know, Disney have hurt Star Wars, maybe beyond repair. So I think this is karma to everyone who hated Jar Jar and hated the prequels. George got his revenge on those people, and that's a shame. But in terms of DC, if we can focus on DC, James Ackrat, what do you think about Midnight's Edge? I was actually watching a video. Look, they're all part of the fandom menace, and they're all very, very right-wing. I agree with a lot of the stuff they say about modern, you know, culture and modern, you know, modern entertainment and where it's gone and how it's become very extremist and the way they called it out. I think that's excellent. I'm not right-wing. I don't agree with their political opinions or their support of Trump, all these different members of the fandom menace, but I do think they do a good job to expose the entertainment industry, and that's what I think of them. But yeah, going back to DC, James Gunn has got a very, very difficult job. You know, it's a very difficult thing to fix, and we'll see if he's able to fix it. And I think he will be judged on Superman Legacy. He will not be judged on Blue Beetle. Even though he says it's the first DC Universe film, he will not be judged. That film has nothing to do with James. Creature Commandos is also coming next year. They're doing an Authority movie, but Superman Legacy and Waller is James's baby. He's involved in that as well. We'll see if that's any good as well. That's the kind of stuff he was working on before he was made the co-CEO of DC Studios. But, you know, in terms of what we judge him on, we judge him on Superman Legacy. News. Any news, Booster Gold? No news on Booster Gold. All that stuff, my friend, is a long way off. We've got to see what happens with the Flash movie. We've got to see what happens with Blue Beetle. Will we get a release of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Won't we get that movie released? Will it be any good? Will people like it? Will it make money? You know, while they're still trying to promote these movies and trying to make some money from these movies, I wouldn't expect them to announce the second part of the slate of Gods and Monsters, which is this brand new DC universe that James Gunn is going to be delving us into. And so until that happens, we're not going to hear much news. He will make some announcements. I think now he's finished marketing Guardians Volume 3. He's all for DC. He purposely did that interview with Michael Rosenbaum on Inside of You to create the hype, just in time for the hype for the Flash movie. It's all trying to get interest. He's done all that he can, but there's not one member of the audience who doesn't know that James Gunn barely had anything to do with the Flash movie. Yes, he gave them notes for certain elements, but most of that film has nothing to do with James Gunn, and that's a fact. Where's 007? Do you think Shazam get reboot? I think Shazam will just be rested for now. He's not an important character. You don't have to dive back in, but certainly we won't be hearing Waz from Shazam for a very long time, in my opinion. I don't think Shazam is a priority for James Gunn. He ain't a priority for me. If he's there, if he's done well, great. I think we're going Superman, Batman, we're going The Authority, we're going Creature Commandos, we're going, what's his name? What's the green monster now? Not the Hulk, the other one. Swamp Thing. We're going Swamp Thing, probably Justice League Dark. We may go Zatanna and things like that. I think that's the kind of direction we're going in. We're looking at around 2 movies a year, I think. Maybe one DC Universe movie and one DC Elseworlds movie, and maybe 1 or 2 max DC shows, because he's talking about oversaturation. So he won't want to be pushing out lots of content per year. And I think that's a very, very good idea. Where am I? James Crap. Do you think the air cut will be released? Well, he's promised to consider it, but at this moment in time, no, I don't see it being released. Blue Beetle Animator. What is your favourite DCEU action scene? Mine is Into the Speedfalls. Well, there's lots of great stuff, especially in the Snyderverse. I think, No Man's Land in the first Wonder Woman film, if you can call it an action scene, depends what you think of action. But I think that's just a beautiful emotional moment, and it's emotive, and it's action, and it's brilliant. It looks great. It's everything I want from cinema. It's absolutely fantastic. It's got Zack Snyder written all over it. I don't think Patty had anything to do with it, and it's a crime she's still getting credited for that sequence. Blue Beetle Animator. Green Lanterns will also be in DCU. That's right. We're getting Lanterns, a Max streaming show, and it's going to be very exciting because, two of the best characters in that universe, which is Hal Jordan and John Stewart. It'll be like, a detective kind of thing. And I'm looking forward to see what James is going to do with that. Waz 007. If Run DC Films, I start off Batman reboot, have Dick Grayson as Robin, Clayface as bad guy. Why not? Why not indeed? I mean, we may get a Clayface in the Batman. I think we're going to get lots of villains in Matt Reeves' The Batman 2. And really looking forward to that film. And the Joker too. Zazie Beetz has been talking about Lady Gaga, as we discussed yesterday, and she's been very positive, and she's not going to be in Deadpool 3. My girl Zazie is now a DC girl, and welcome to the family. You made the right decision, because Deadpool 3, in my opinion, is going to suck. That's why they're trying to distract us with Bryan Singer's X-Men actors like, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and Logan, and I think they should have just left that character alone. We had a great Old Man Logan movie. Why keep on bringing things back and making them worse and making them not work? This is my problem with new Hollywood. So we're going to wrap this up now. It's been on a bit longer than I thought it would. Now, don't forget, I will be back tonight for Movies TV Mad live with Mick, whatever you want to call it. Call me anything you want, but be polite about it. Where are we? Blue Beetle Animator. Batman movies haven't used Robin enough. No, they haven't. John, I think there is more chance for the Batman Forever cut being released than the air cut. You're right, John. I applaud you for that. It's true. It's obvious. Because there's no drama around that. James the Crap, do you think Disney will sell Marvel and Star Wars? I think Disney are creatively and financially on their knees, and they're going to sell off everything but that for the time being. But I think they're in so much trouble now, and this writer's strike and this potential SAG-AFTRA actors union strike as well are not going to help them. And eventually they will have to sell Lucasfilm, and they will have to sell Marvel. And I think that's what's going to happen. And it wouldn't surprise me if they sell Marvel Studios to Sony. And I think that will be a brilliant result for the fans. Now, if they were to sell it to Universal, that would make me really happy, because Universal still own the rights to Hulk. I would like Ed Norton to return as Old Man Bruce Banner and get a sequel to the brilliant original Hulk movie. Waz 007, then Superman reboot film, then Wonder Woman, then Flash reboot, then Batman 2, and Superman 2, then Green Arrow, then Green Lantern, then JL films. Waz 007, thanks, live stream. Thank you very much, Waz. So this has been Wednesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And remember, smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. Until I see you tonight, goodbye. Goodbye. Auf Wiedersehen. It's raining cats and dogs out there. I can barely hear myself speak. Oh my God. If I survive this damn torrential rain, I will see you later. Thank you, everyone. See you later on.